Welcome to the fourth and final episode of Series 63, everybody. That's right. It's a 4-episode series because we have a special treat to end this series this month. We have special guest and designer of the game, Kieron Gillen, joining us this episode to give us his perspective of the game, as well as create an entirely new group of people together. You won't want to miss this one. And just to give you all fair warning, this episode does contain spoilers for the Die comics. Before we get to all of that, though, here's what to expect in our call to action.
After the show, you can join us back here for our thoughts on this episode, on doing a 4-episode series, as well as some further announcements about a Catacon and the Courier's Call Kickstarters. We'll talk a little bit about reviews and patron thank you sign-offs and all of that kind of stuff. Including a new member. That's right. So, the usual and also unusual. I really sold it there.
I know. Until then, enjoy the show, everybody.
Welcome to a special bonus episode of Character Creation Spotlight, everyone. In this bonus segment, we'll be shining a light on some current or up-and-coming games to keep an eye out for, or in this case, ones we're just really, really excited about.
Yeah.
I'm one of your hosts, Amelia, and today my co-host Ryan and I are welcoming Kieron Gillen to talk about Die, the role-playing game, a meta RPG about getting pulled into a fantasy world and exploring what it means to play.
Welcome to Character Creation Spotlight, Kieron. Really great to have you here with us.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. I'm just always interested to hear how people describe the game. So I'm sitting here going, oh, okay, that's what we kind of are.
I don't even know where to start with this one.
There are fights. This is one of the things, like, you describe it, it does a lot of stuff, but it's also, it is an RPG too,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Kieron, could you start us off by telling us a bit about yourself? What sort of projects you have going on right now?
Hey, my name's Kieron Gillen. I'm sort of historically a comic book writer. Like, I used to be a games critic beforehand. Like, I wrote about video games, and primarily video games anyway, for about 15 years. I've worked for, like, probably biggest stuff like Marvel, so X-Men and Iron Man and all that lot. But I've done
Never
my own
heard
books.
of them.
Yeah,
like those tiny indie things.
15 years ago, no one would have. That's the exciting thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I love that. And then I've done my own sort of stuff, which has done pretty well. Like Wicked Divine is probably the biggest one, and Once a Future, and relevantly Die, which was an RPG about a comic about RPGs mainly, and about depression and your hopes and fears changing as you get older. And I've always been a sort of like Sunday designer. It's in the concept of Sunday painter. It's like the insult people talk about for people just go and do it sort of amateurishly. I've always been a bit of a Sunday designer. So I've been meddling around forever. And with Die, I kind of, I'm going to do a whole RPG from scratch because it's stupid. Like, why would anyone do that? So I did that. And my friends at Roanoke and Deckard helped hone that 300,000 word document into a 100,000 word document someone might actually want to use. So that's kind of what I do. And so I'm writing like X-Men stuff at the moment. I'm working on other projects and some of Die expansions and various other like stretch goal RPG things for friends and itch stuff because I can't help myself.
Of course.
Well, it's once you start, it's such a slippery slope. Like once you start, for the longest time, I was like, no, I will not design a game. It is a bridge too far. I am a nerd, but I am not that much of a nerd. Like, I will play games. I will make a podcast about games. I will be an Ennies judge, but I will not design a game. Because the moment you start, that's it.
It's downhill from there.
Yeah, now I am. And
for me, it's a case of like, I did stuff in that, but never released. I got to the point where it's boring. You know what I mean? Like the game, it basically works, but anything now is basically UI design. And it's like, that's too much for me. But die felt different. And just, it's addictive. You know, as you say, if you entirely know, the moment you see people create magic from some structure you've created, like, I wish I'd done it years ago. You know, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful medium.
Right, exactly. I'm really excited to have you here with us. This is kind of an interesting diversion from our normal series because usually we have spotlights by themselves and series are self-contained, but we are endcapping our die series with this episode. So this is like an altered, abridged version of our normal format. So we're sticking to the highlights of the system. We got some special questions for you, Kieron. So without further ado, how about we find out what this game is all about?
What's in a game?
Could you start off by telling us a bit about the core concept of die from your perspective?
Yeah, I'm curious how you describe it.
I sort of like pitch it. It's kind of just the story. Because like I sort of skip past the comic because the comic's irrelevant. That they kind of are sister projects. So I said something like, okay, what die is about we sit down. We make a group of real-world people who are messed up and flawed in realistic human ways. They've got hopes and fears. We call these people persona. We step away from the table. We come back, and these people have gathered together to play a role-playing game. These persona, you know, play out designing characters. So you're sitting around the table, playing a role-playing game. At this point, dice will be distributed, and you'll be dragged into a fantasy world where your personas gain the physical form of the characters they've just designed. They go through a fantasy world, which is constructed of their hopes and fears reflected back at them. Their sort of psychology is turned into adventures. If you've got a very distant relationship with like a judgmental parental figure, that's like the weird Gandalf wizard looks a bit like your mum or something like that. And you've got that similar, really charged. At the same time, it pulls your detritus too. Like, let's say, you know, if you said in the persona, I've gone well off the actual core game. I've gone to some details now. But like, let's say your mum was, let's say you throw away as a sort of a joke, oh yeah, I'm very into Taylor Swift. And suddenly you're dealing with the fact that Taylor Swift is the god of fire in this universe or whatever. So you go to this place, your hopes and fears are used to examine your people and have adventures and all that stuff. And then you all get together at the end of the adventure and decide whether to stay or go. And this is kind of where like die gets interesting in that way, as in it's about choosing between the real world or the fantasy. And the whole game has been about kind of tempting the players to stay or not. And the problem here is the players have to all agree. Like they all agree to stay or they agree to go, and dead people don't get votes. So it's kind of a game about, well, do we carry on playing or not? And what will you do to get what you really want? What won't you do? And that's kind of what the heart of drama is. That's a kind of extended version. I'll probably like boil it down to 30 seconds. I've definitely got a 30-second version.
Like we've already done, by the time this comes out, we will have already put out 3 episodes where we run through character creation from top to bottom, where we all made characters and everything. So like that fits perfectly, I think, with what we did.
Yeah.
And
do you think it sounds accurate?
Yeah. I think it sounds great. I obviously, as the expert in this situation on the game, think that sounds perfect. No, it matches very well with what we did and just sort of the what exactly our master in that particular situation put us through, which was definitely picking up on every little detail that we. Our poor characters, they were so sad.
It's worth noting. The thing I didn't mention there was the master, the fact that GM gets a character. You know what I mean? Like you've got to edit to get the concept in. But absolutely the idea the master is also a player and it's kind of playing games with the idea of them being antagonists, but also of course being collaborator. Like their character, which is I love that stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited. Brian and I actually get to start playing next week after.
At the end of the month, yeah.
Yeah, on the 30th, right? Something like that.
30th, yep.
Yeah, we finally get to play a little bit, and I'm excited because this is exactly my kind of game. I like games that are like deeply personal and lots of moral gray areas and all of that kind of stuff. When we did our character creation, I got to be the dictator.
Oh no!
Which I was, I was so excited about. Because like what a complicated situation, and like just the. Like mental gymnastics that you have to go through there, and like, There's just so much here that is like everything about my favorite kinds of games that I love.
Dictators, like the Dictator's the unusual class. That most of the characters have to have a problem. They've got a relationship with power which is problematic for themselves. As you know, the Neros, they need the goals. So that there's addiction or like work metaphor or whatever there. But Dictator's different. Dictator's got no cost. It's just the cost to everyone around them, and of course to your ethics and soul. You know what I mean? And that's a very different sort of problem. As in, it's not bad for you, but.
No.
No, and that's awful. Yeah. It's petrifying character class. I hate them.
Yeah, so I'm curious, like what, I feel like I had seen somewhere else in like an interview or I don't know, something where you talked about that, like that was not a character that you would really want to play. Like
that's not, it's the character I most regularly drop if I'm running a smaller group. It's that kind of like, because it automatically puts certain flavors in the mix. Yeah. Like, so if you're like, and they don't say they become dominant flavors, but like there's certainly, like, occasionally I'm just not in the mood to take that in, so that they can excise them. Of course, one of the things about the game is, despite having 6 players, including GM, you're probably running most people I think run in a smaller group. It's like it looks like D&D, but in fact it runs much closer to an indie game. Like I normally run for 4 players, including GM. That's how I kind of run Die. So you're always not picking a class. Right. On the other hand, like you put Dictator in, it's really rewarding in a different way, because it's like, if you're giving a Dictator, it's somebody who wants to take it seriously, explicitly. It's like, there's many Dictator players I've ran for, and I ran a long campaign. I think the Dictator used their power like 3 or 4 times in the whole 12 sessions. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was serious. And when they used it, the other players were petrified of them, because I didn't do it subtly. It was whole, and that's interesting, especially like the relationship with power becomes, the question of Dictator is temptation, really. Anyway, I'm not always interested in being scared of my living daylights. And of course, the other thing is, what I love about game design, this is the other thing, is like people are better at this game than I am. Because the part I want to, like, this is true of games anyway, but specifically with Die's design, it's like, it's about the group. Like the Persona Gen, you get what you put in. So people who completely go heart in completely, they get a very, very, very intense experience. But if you go in lightly, you end up with something a bit more like, I don't know, the movie Jumanji. Like you get this, and that's still a good story. It's just not as full on. And it's like games are always a mirror. Also, RPGs are always a mirror to ourselves. But Die really is. No, and I quite like how it's turned out like that.
Yeah, I find it interesting because we had, right before we recorded our Die episodes, we recorded an episode about using role-playing games in a therapeutic setting. And we did a lot of talk about like how much of yourself people bring into characters. And then we recorded Die, and the character that I made, I was like, you know what, I'll just be me, it'll be fine. And then,
Amelia, no.
But then we also have this, this feeling of when we make our show, we run through character creation, we come out with these amazing characters, we do a little bit of discussing, like, what do we think would happen? But we never play the game. We never actually play these characters. So, like, you can make all kinds of decisions that you're like, when I sit down at a table, that would have so many consequences. But I don't have to face any of them. So I got to make this character that had a very difficult relationship with control in her own life, and like, was a parent and a mom and all that kind of stuff. And then like, what would that look like when all of a sudden you're in charge of everything and you can do whatever you want and everyone listens to you?
That's the fun of Dictator.
But also they hate it.
Yeah. It's definitely Dictator. Like most of the classes you can either cast against type or with type. So like the Dictator is either somebody with no power in their life, or somebody who always wants to have power in their life. And both of them are really interesting. And all the classes are like that. It's kind of get what you always wanted to be or get what you never had. And they're like 2 really like primal kind of vibes. Yeah.
I love what we ended up with just like that little bit, just like the questions and the world building and that kind of stuff was
the iconics on the manual, as in all the iconic characters, we designed them by running a Persona Gen session with RRD. So we actually, all the characters in all the examples, or at least most of the examples, are stuff we did exactly what you did. Like,
wow.
So all those examples are based around these kind of characters who've never got to game, but they've kind of all exist in my head now, because I'm thinking, okay, that fall is a specific character which was played by my, a friend who I know, and I'm imagining what I would have taken them, what adventures I would have taken them on. So I love that stuff, the potentiality of a character.
Yeah, no, I know we've had Grant and Chris from RRD on our show a few times too, and we have so much fun running through that like ridiculous character creation and just like being like, no consequences to our choices. It's great. I want to know what inspired you to like take sort of a classic D&D style setting, this like, you know, the game that we've all played and kind of a regular sort of classic role-playing game, and then make this game from that, or the comics, or, you know, how all of that worked together. What brought you to this?
I'm sort of squinting. It's that kind of like, that's really difficult, because I think it's like an utterly fundamental question. I wanted to do a game that felt like the comic, and the comic that felt like the game. That was kind of the vibe. And so if you're going to, and my mode as a comic writer, and to be honest, as a game designer, tends to be deconstructionary. I tend to like look at something, let's really take this apart and heighten the elements we can make things clearer. I mean, we've talked about Dictator a bunch. The Dictator's basically the bard if everyone's petrified of bards. The idea that let's take the questions of consent seriously. Let's make the questions of consent absolutely what the character is about. And like, there's a lot about that. So in other words, Die is, to be deconstruction, you also have to hit the biggest icons. So in other words, as much as I primarily play really indie games, but to talk on the high level cultural sense about how RPGs work in pop culture and how they took over the world, you have to engage with large scale fantasy games. That's pop, you know what I mean? Like, and there's a lot about Die in fact, increasingly, if you ever do a sequel, there's a lot about the actual in-world comic of Die, is the idea that D&D is this, you know, the evil empire that's conquered everything. I'm saying that kind of simply, because I would never write something that crass. But like, the idea of the omnipresence is there. So you have to risk it. So that you start with classic D&D and then you build. Because Die's kind of got this dual structure. Like, since Grant's not here, he's not here to punch me, so I say we're Cartesian. Like, Die is about the whole mind-body thing. Like, the body part is the classic D&D-esque game. And it's not D&D-esque, it just uses the tropes and has a different system. But it runs in a Gygax Arneson mode. You know, it's kind of like,
it's that easy touchstone for everybody to understand when you talk about those things too. Yeah.
But it's also quasi-objective. You know, it's classically about the idea that here are the rules, and the GM kind of says what happens inside the game world, and you say what you do. That's a classic D&D RPG. Then there's the other side of the game, which is the persona side. But explicitly, the players have final say about everything. Everything is, there are no rules in that side, absolutely no rules. And it's solely based around conversation and consent and collaboration. And on that bit, the players have complete power. They can invent backstory as much as they want throughout. And the game, the GM has final say. And between the two of them is, I think you get a conversation about what RPGs are. And then, because essentially you're creating people and making choices on one side and how it integrates to the other. That's kind of why I did it like that. Because I was interested in, this is quite highfalutin. But you know what I mean? Like, the idea of taking this classical game and using almost like a mannequin controlled by another world. You know, like, and this part intellectually is a game about the nature of reality. So like, I had to do a classic quasi-simulationist, light simulationist, but the idea that, you know, GM rolls dice. And I don't play many games where GM rolls dice anymore, but they have to, because the second you don't have, if everyone in the world exists in a different way to the players, you've answered the question of reality. Right. No, the players are the only real things here. You know, there's a fundamental solipsism, an narcissism to like player-facing design. And I say that with love. But like, as a game that Die is, I couldn't do that. So there's a lot, you know what I mean? Like, what you've asked is a question which is very complicated. There's so many aspects to it. But in the reality, like, I just saw it at the beginning, like, oh, you make up people, you stick them in a world that tortures them, and then they decide whether to stay or leave. You know what I mean? That was the core design. And the world has to be a bit D&D-y because it speaks to the nature of the icons. That was a very long answer to.
No, it was a really good, thoughtful answer though. And I'm always fascinated about that, like, marriage between like hard mechanics and storytelling and the way that they work together or don't work or things like that too, which is always, that's a thing that with Die has really fascinated me, is like the way that the mechanics interact with the narrative feels really tight. It's in a way that I think, like, you know, especially things like classic D&D do not.
It's definitely like, for me, it's like it's a sort of the core mechanic-y side is this classic D&D that I would be it's this classic D&D game that I would be willing to run. As in, like, this, as a GM, this does what I need and then gets the hell out of the way. You know, because it's, you know, everything's stuff like, even like players are so fragile. And that's because I want combats to be really short, because it's not really about the combats, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That makes sense.
When it is. I mean, it is about the combats, but, you know, it's not about the slow attrition. I was chatting to somebody about this recently. It's like, you know, the game ends with that big confrontation between the players. They've got to be able to murder each other very easily. It's got to be the Reservoir Dogs standoff, because it's not, you know, I've betrayed you and you're probably going to die at this point. or not, and and the emotional consequences of all those things. I mean, it takes it kind of close to something like PBTA, where of course, if you're rolling, you're kind of doing a lot of story. I want, if you roll on the dice, something big happens, and that's kind of like something I as a designer, that's kind of my philosophy anyway. As much as I play Warhammer stuff on this. Rolling handfuls of dice is also fun, but that's not what I want this game to be about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a time and place for that, and then there's also not. And and I think that's the thing that I respect about like role playing games in general too, is just like the depth and breadth of the way that those mechanics can work, and the times where like something like PBTA, where it's like I only roll when it's really important and this outcome like matters. And then something, I always give the example of Shadowrun and your bathtub full of dice, where you're just like, I'll take 48 D6s and we'll roll them, and like for everything. Yeah. And so
I mentioned that I wouldn't run anything more trad, but I'll certainly play. If a good friend who I like, I'll play. I will. Yeah. Games are so. I mean, I'm speaking to the converted here, but like, games are good. Like, they're all. There's so much great stuff out there of different types and different styles and different itches to scratch. And it's and there's a reason I don't really play. I used to be a video game journalist. I don't play video games anymore significantly. Partially because time. I'm a new parent, and yada yada yada. Yep. But at the same time, it's like I've got a limited amount of ludic time, and the game space, the RPG space, is so exciting right now. I don't really see why I play anything else.
Right. Right. Yeah. Aside from the fact that I can play video games by myself without having to like schedule things. I think that's that's the thing that's running in their favor right now.
I have so little spare time at the moment. It's like I'm aware that if I took 3 hours playing the games I would want to play, my wife would divorce me.
See, when my kids were newborns, I figured out, because I nursed both my kids, I figured out that if I put the pillow a certain way and held the baby a certain way, I could also use a controller. So my son did not sleep, and so that was my video game time. I would stay up with him all night when he was a newborn and just like play video games all night. It was great.
There has been significant Switch playing by Chrissy. Let's say.
See, you got a lot of time with the baby in your arms, and you can prop him up a little bit. And it's great.
Well, I know that the comic and the role-playing game were pretty much developed and worked on it simultaneously, right? How did that process of working on each kind of feed into one another? Like, did certain abilities come out of the comic that were like, ooh, that would be really good in the game, or come from game design first and then work their way into the comic?
The standard answer is yes.
Correct.
I've got an anecdote, which I say in almost every interview, so excuse me if anyone's heard this before, which you will have. For a long time I was worried about die, because which is the dog and which is the tail? Is it an RPG with a tie-in comic or a comic with a tie-in game? And eventually got the point where the dog ate its own tail, became a dog Ouroboros, and basically just became thing. Now I kind of look at die RPG and die comic as two ways of looking at the same thing. Like a hologram, and you have them both, they become a greater perspective. In actual fact, stuff just bounced between them quite freely. I end up thinking a bit like when I was doing Wickdiv, I had a playlist. So Wick and Divine is of a comic I did, like a 500-song playlist. I listened to Shuffle constantly when I was doing everything, and it became a device to just think about Wickdiv more. So this song set to this character, and now I'm walking through London and sad, how do I feel about it? So just by constantly doing this, I was always thinking about Wickdiv and always getting insights. With Die, the fact I was doing both at once meant that there were two different tasks, but they illuminated each other. And occasionally problems in one solved the other. The example I always use, because it's kind of the magical one. Like in the comic, I knew there was going to have I knew I wanted some kind of iconic character, so that like the Fair and the Fallen. They're the two classic sort of villains or antagonistic icons. And the Fallen, I knew more about the Fair, but the Fallen were kind of, they're probably created by the Fair, and I wanted this kind of weird techno-magical like vibe to them. And I was working on the game. I was working on the problem of player elimination. Now I talked about how squishy the characters are, and and I don't really want people to be eliminated like through the game because it's not very interested in the idea. And I thought, okay, hackers, they just die and get up. They can be like some, and then if they kill each other, they could get the powers back. That's quite cool. And that's such a core part of the end game. And then I was, that's Fallen, isn't it? That's the Fallen are all players. And I had no idea the Fallen in the comic were players until they made them players to solve the problem in the game. And that's such a huge part, a fundamentally enormous part of the comic is people reading.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It's like, obviously, a lot of die is creepy in a good way in terms of like, being a meta comic is designed to basically re-enchant RPGs and make them creepy and scary in a satanic panic way. And it works on me as well in terms of like, like, you know what I mean? Like bits like that where I feel like I'm being manipulated by something bigger than myself.
Right.
And it's a process of discovery rather than invention, you know? And that stuff scares you because that's literally what happens to the characters in the comic. Yeah. So yeah, all the time. And occasionally it's like, and occasionally there's stuff I don't think about. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I think the games are more interesting. My games I like, they pose questions rather than proposing answers.
Yes.
Like I created the emotion knights, like these 8, each one of these knights are powered or feed or channel a different emotion. And I had rules, okay, they can do this and this and this, but I didn't deliberately think through them. And I don't, as in like, you're meant to use the player's imagination. You know, what could I do with this? And same with Dictator, what can I do with this? And it was only the only time I've ever played that, a friend of mine ran a little short session for me. And I'll play a Vigilance Knight. And it was only by playing a Vigilance Knight, I thought, wait. They can send, the sword can sense people, swords can sense your power of emotion. So if someone's angry near a Rage Knight, they can sense rage. So they could use it as a kind of like, and I thought, well, so Vigilance Knights means they can use it as a guard spotter. You know what I mean? Like, so you could use in that kind of like, I can talk to my sword and my sword will tell me where people nearby who are watching are. You know what I mean? And so you'll start Metal Gear Solid it. And, that was not something I planned, but something very much, of course, came from, okay, this character is now playing these rules. What happens? And there's a lot of that dies. And the Paragons are all like, here's a set of interesting questions. Players and the players in the group will decide what the answers are. You know what I mean? And that's exciting to me.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, I think, a thing that we focus a lot on when we do our character creation stuff too, is that like when games let you kind of answer some of those questions on your own rather than like giving you the answer and you have to figure out how to fit it in. But when you have the ability to answer those things on your own, player buy-in always seems to be so much higher. And your enjoyment of the campaign and the story that you're telling and all of that kind of stuff, at least for me personally, feels so much higher when I have that stake in things, that it's like, I've said this, I want it to be this way or work this way or whatever. It just feels so much more satisfying.
Absolutely. It's like one of the tropes are like, it's like protection against evil spells. And I've included protection against evil spell because it's a classic D&D trope. But like, I never define what evil is.
Right.
Like, and I sidebar this in terms of what is evil in your game? You tell me.
Right. Well, really, when you have a character
that's
type
totally interesting.
called a dictator, like what is evil?
Right.
The question of evil is like, I mean, that's the best philosophical question. That's basically kept us busy for thousands of years trying to define what evil is. And it's like, what we're going to find around this table is evil. I much find it most of it's more interesting open than closed for me. Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really interesting, like commentary on society as a whole too, like because we have those big philosophical questions and every century it's gonna have a different answer, right?
Yeah. There's a bit in the bestiary, which the bestiary is like something I'm most proud of because it's came from conversation with me and Grant trying to work out how to do it, because the problem of diet, it's not meant to have here's a set of cool monsters, it's meant to have here's a set of ingredients you can make. Because it's like, you probably want stats for, I don't know, an orc or a griffin or whatever, but you're not going to use them as an orc and a griffin. You're going to use them as a warped version of something from people's real life. The griffin will be the proud best friend or whatever, that kind of stuff. So what do you do? So what we end up doing, of course, is we present some very basic stats, some ideas what they could be. Then we present 6 truths. And the truths are basically, here are some things about which are true culturally about this monster. And we explain that if you want to deconstruct something, you either make something more true or less true. So in other words, or more true or you invert it, yada, yada, yada. But like stuff like the orc one, for example, I didn't write them all. We got a load of really great stretch goal writers, but I did several like the dragon and the orc and the minotaur. But one of the orc's questions is, or one of the orc's truths, an orc is fundamentally an orc is what is viewed as disposable and what is possible, what you're allowed to kill and is also permitted and encouraged to kill. And of course this varies, like to the Punisher, all criminals are orcs. In the Matrix, all cops are orcs.
Yep.
Like the orc is a role in society in RPG. So that truth as a statement, you know what I mean? Like, and that all that bestiary is designed to basically make people start thinking about them. Okay, let's aggressively think about what an orc means. And there's 5 other truths like that. And it's just different. And that kind of like, that's what I loved. Like,
yeah. And then what does that mean for the world? The way you've answered those questions and like the impact that has on, how characters view it and how, NPCs view it. And
it would have been so much more commercial, like, probably to make Die as a kind of like that big sword. It's a classic big swordsman. It's like people buy Dune, and these are all great games. I buy every single Lord of the Rings RPG ever because I love Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah.
But that's not what we wanted to do with Die. It was like, yeah, we could have the iconic elements, the classes, the 2 monster types, Die itself, but the rest has to be about showing you how to do it and making it as easy as possible for the players to make their own Die. Because for me, like, that's what RPGs are about. It's the punk rock form a band thing. Like the idea of creativity is democratized and amazing, and it's easy, or it's relatively easy if you kind of, it's a trick we can teach you.
Yes.
And that's kind of what Die is for me. Like Die is kind of like, this is how I wrote the comic. This is how I mixed up people. This is how I tortured them. This is how I drove them to a dramatic conclusion.
Yeah.
And if you follow the rituals we set up, you'll make your own version of that. And it'll be absolutely different, but it'll be that structure. Anyway, I'm rambling.
No, you're not. That's totally why we have you here. It's great. Can you talk about any like key design decisions that you made in order to kind of capture the essence of what you were doing in the comics and like creating this like the gaming experience and like specific things that you had to make sure were in the game to get the feel that you wanted, to make it feel different from something like D&D or, any other kind of like adaptation kind of game?
It's kind of the I think the Persona Gen stuff. I mean, it's so much as like originally in the beta in Persona Gen, which is when you make out your real life people, it was always free form. Like, a few of the scenarios where they had like set questions, but like I kind of wanted people to just sit down and make it up. Like, I don't know, Starcross, like, Starcross works like that as well.
Yeah.
But like, I pretty Mina from RRD, she was like, "No, Kieron, for God's sake, just write the set questions." Because like people, tell them how to do it. Just not in a broad way. Do this, because do this is, and that kind of moment of like, all right, I'm gonna have to work out questions for like the first game. Worth noting, there's loads of question sets, and you can always ask more, but these are good questions to basically make messed up people.
Yeah.
That, and just how can you very carefully and most efficiently set the tone of, oh, you're this person. And like, we described that as the big question, I think, in the rituals correct session. And there's a set of like 2 sets questions. So it's like, first half, establish something. Second half, this now makes you realize why you're messed up.
Right.
And my favorite one has the same, there's 2 questions which both have the same first half. And the first half is, there's something you really wanted when you were a teenager. Like, something you really wanted. What was it? Like, to be rich, like to be famous, to settle down with the woman you love or the person you love. Like yada, 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 or something else. So both players would answer that. And then the second half is, that thing you wanted, you didn't get it. Why?
Yeah. Some of those questions were so loaded that it was just like, that didn't work out for you. What happened? It was like, oh.
Yeah, but then of course the second question is exactly the same. First half is, oh, that thing you wanted, you really got it. You got it. It didn't make you happy. Why? And that kind of, those 2 questions extremely explain what Die is about in terms of that. Yeah, these people are fundamentally disappointed in some way, and that's why Die is going to have a relationship with them when they go to the fantasy world and see how it could have been. That big choice, the players immediately know at the start as in, oh, this is who I am, or this is why this person has needs and losses. That is, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like one of the things that all the way through Die is, it's really easy, not easy. One of the weird quirks of RPGs is that, or in fact, narrative generally, what the story is becomes the thing that matters. Like, people obviously talk about Star Wars and they talk about how Leia, she shakes off Alderaan dying with everyone she ever knew, but Luke cries about the guy he met yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's not about Luke, Leia being badass. What that's actually, because Luke totally forgets about the people who raised him very quickly too. What's actually about is because we have known Obi-Wan for infinitely longer than the people in Alderaan. He's more real. And the problem by that goblin you met in the first adventure is more real than your mum and dad in the Persona Gen. So much about Die's design is reminding people about the real world. So all the way through the the GM is asking the players, A, they're reminding about the real world, but B, asking questions about like, so what does that make? What would your mum think of you now? Or like, and you have to get that. In fact, the really small mechanic, and this is an incredibly small thing to make your real world more real, is that you get an extra dice if you do a flashback to the real world and why it inspires your character in this moment. In that kind of like, I remember a time I stood up to bullies, and you describe that, and you get an extra dice. Yeah. So even the most mechanically minded players are forced to deal with the real world. It's an incredibly small bribe, and it's incredibly unsubtle, but it kind of does work.
Right. It's a great way to, like I said, like reinforce that narrative feeling of like what you want mechanically and saying like, okay, well, I'll help you out, but you have to help me out too.
Yeah.
And what I want is your sad stories.
Right. It feels like Die is a game where character creation never ends, right? Because you're constantly building on new aspects of your character as you're going, which is fascinating.
We've got this kind of Die principle. I mean, like the sort of principles, like as in the 7 basic GM rules, and one of them is persona gen never ends. Like never. It's like kind of someone hits you with a sword for the first time. It's like, okay, tell me about the worst your persona's ever been hurt. Like, I was in a car crash. Like, this hurts just like that. That kind of like it never ends, and especially in a campaign, because it's like if we went to the pub for a year, we'll be still telling each other stories about our lives. We're people. We're made of stories. Like, and that's the kind of the great joy. It never ever ends because you're always telling you more about autobiography. It's full on Faustian nonsense.
Yeah. Oh, I love it so much. I love the way that those like creation questions just spurred such interesting and intricate stories from such small questions. Because like Brian, you got that question like, you got everything you want. Like, why aren't you happy?
Why aren't I happy? Exactly.
Yeah. And it told us basically everything about your character. About like, I have this tech empire and I designed the thing that I wanted to. I'm wealthy. I'm famous. I hate it.
Because I'm lonely.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting because like I went into the character creation not knowing a single thing about like the process, the steps, all that sort of stuff. And then I was second, I think, to get my question asked. So the first question was, why did you not get what you wanted? So I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to get asked that soon. So I'm starting to think of why I'm like not successful. Why? And then I get hit with this sideball and I'm like, that's interesting.
Oh, like actually, I'm the new Steve Jobs. I'm very successful. I just hate everything about it. Yeah.
Oh, it's so interesting.
Yeah, and mine was very much like, I got the thing that everybody told me that I should want and should make me happy, and it doesn't make me happy.
Yep.
Like, yeah. And somehow like totally opposite characters, but like very similar questions for all of them. Not the same questions, but it's amazing how just like those little tweaks and differences, we ended up with such wildly different people.
Yeah. It's one of the things about just the nature of an RPG manual, the nature of the fact that the rules side is more rulesy and takes up more space. Persona Gen is at least half the game. Like it doesn't matter about how big it is in the book. Persona is the key. That's where the real design is. And it kind of, when I talk to people about writing Die adventures, it's that kind of like work on the persona questions, because that's where the game is, because that's where you get the cool stuff. This is where the players realize who they are. And so things like there's no way to describe Die without saying it's meta. It obviously is very meta, but people kind of occasionally get it's going to be quite hard to play then. And it's like, no, because everyone knows messed up people. Everyone's quite sad themselves. Making up sad people is like really easy to do, because I know more sad people than I know orcs.
Right. Never met a bard in my life, but
actually, I've met some bards.
No, obviously, like that's why we've made a show focusing on it. Is it like that is the first interaction people have with games too? It is the first. The first thing that you do when you sit down to play a game is creating characters. And so if your character creation process does not draw people in, and it doesn't really like give them an idea of what playing the game is about, I feel like personally, it's not going to be as successful of a game if I'm not able to create this thing that I'm interested in learning more about.
Yeah, all my favorite games do. Like, maybe not all my favorite games, but so many do. You know what I mean? Like, you can sort of, like when I ran the first game of Die ever and did Persona Gen, it's like, that was the moment in my head, this is working. You know what I mean? That was kind of like, oh no, this is it. This is you're onto something here. But like, I remember when I ran Borg for the first time recently, you know what I mean? Like, just like when you rolled up the characters and the entire players are laughing at how ridiculously broken their people are. It was like, A, this is great, but B, this is going to work really well for my friends. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, we're all bought in. Let's play with these weirdos now. Yeah. And that, you know, it's magical. I love that moment.
It's such a good feeling, you know, like going through it and watching everything kind of slowly build up and seeing what you're getting. I love that feeling of like, oh boy, what a mess we've made. We haven't even started yet.
Speaking about experiencing that sort of feeling, I wonder, would we be able to go through like a normal session 0 process right now and create some characters together?
Give it a shot, certainly.
Wonderful.
Ooh, are we going to make more people? I didn't realize
yes.
Even more people.
More sad people.
More people.
My God. Okay, let me get my stuff open.
Let's make some people.
We need more fallen fodder.
That's true. That's true. I know.
Of course, one of the things I not like about though, something we deliberately did was like we don't do a session 0. Like session 1 includes session 0.
Yeah, because the session 0 is the session 1.
Yeah. And like kind of like you play for the persona gen, you do the car gen, you get and you have a very short bit of adventure. And, you know, it's kind of like on rails, but you still get to play the game a bit, and you get a good you get a cliffhanger, and then the GM can go away and work out what happens next time. You know, that's kind of quite a deliberate part of the design. Not obviously everything's deliberate, but that's kind of like ritualizing session 0, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, session 0 is not session 0. It's always session 1. That's the kind of like,
Well, and that's the thing. Like, there's been a few games that we've covered that have that sort of ritual aspect to it, and it's really fascinating to see kind of sneak in these games, because it adds that like an extra gravitas to the character creation, which is really fascinating.
And the other thing I like, one thing that way we do it is like the fact you go into the action is useful for me. Like, you're not just like abstractly making the people and then you go away and you come back and it's a little bit colder. The idea you're coming in a bit hotter. These are still new people, and you know, Anyway, I'm rambling. It's my game.
I think 90% of podcasts are just rambling. Like, that's totally fine.
All I remember is I don't need I remember a lot, but I don't need the character sheet until after the persona stuff is.
That's true. I don't need to worry about finding them right at this moment, I suppose. Can go back to my notebook. Okay. Now, where do we start?
Miss Option, would you like me to run it like I would run it?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Run it as you would normal to get our characters made.
Okay. I'll fast forward for the bit which I do. Like, I'll describe how it normally works. Okay. What we're doing here, let's assume I've had the intro. What I normally do, I would pitch the game. I'll say, like, this is the game. You make sad people. We're gonna do this. Make sad people. Go into the world. Have an adventure, etc. And I'll talk about tone. I'll talk about like how hardcore we're going to go. You know, those kind of palette elements. Then we'll do the magic circle, like that Ken and Lauren wrote for us, which is basically kind of a ritualized set of rules of what we're including in the game and what we're not including in the game. So it's like both tone. We'll set up the idea of inter-party conflict, like, as in, are we going to, you know, die? The standard option of running die as you have it is probably as part of the climax, but you don't have to do it that way. And that is useful for lots of reasons, not least the fact that it sets people's brains going, oh wait, we're going to be in conflict, you know, and that, you know, even if it never goes there, the possibility. We talk about dictator, we talk about what we're leaving out of the game, what we're including. So that's basically it. Then I'll go, okay, what we're going to do now is generate some people. We're a group of people who played RPGs together as teenagers. Like, it's got a classic fantasy RPG, entirely normal, and now it's X amount of years later, and we're getting together at a school reunion, and we're going to play a game for old time's sake. And then we start going through the questions together. We've done Reunited. Do you want to do a different one? Like, let's grab one of the. At the back of the book, in the appendix, we've got multiple persona gen groups, like standard ones.
Yeah.
As well as like most of the adventures have their own one as well. Last game before graduation is one. The driven social group is one, and distant fans, as in we're all online fans of something,
Interesting.
Ooh.
Anyone particularly appealing? Like the Driven Circle implies we all got together to do something. Like maybe we're in a band, maybe we're in a startup, that kind of vibe. The last game before graduation is we're all like, 18 or whatever. And this is like we're all basically playing kids. And Distant Fans is we all met online in an online social group.
Yeah, let's do that one.
Okay.
The online social group?
Okay.
Yeah, why not?
I've never actually, we all met in a fandom. Along the way, as well as sharing our love and often hate, after our hate for our love, you started playing an online role-playing game together. It's been fun, but we've never met until now. There's a major con, and we're all here. And we decided maybe we'll actually have a game in the flesh. Excellent.
I'm excited.
Okay, what we are all fans of. We need to choose something we have at least some familiarity with. I mean, it could be a TV show, a movie, an author, comics, a music, a band, or something else. Like, as a group, is there anything particularly excites us?
Aside from role-playing games.
We could say, actually, fans of a role-playing game would be like, because
I feel like we should all be fans of like the same podcast or something.
Which podcast?
That'd be interesting.
Let's see.
What is anything we all listen to?
Right. Ryan listens to all podcasts.
I try.
You do. Let's see. Or we could make one up too, probably.
Yeah. That's true. We can make some. Actually, in some ways it's fun. Like, what TV shows is everyone watching at the moment? What's an old school we like? We made a few Star Wars jokes. You could just grab Star Wars because it's an easy one.
That's true. That's true.
Like,
that is something that everybody, not everybody, but most people
definitely
know.
Also, we're not running this, so it doesn't matter as much, but it's always best to grab something because it's like, I had a friend of mine who said, I'm really into Brian Eno as a character, persona base. And it's like, and she knew nothing about Brian Eno. And that kind of like, did kind of, not that it's a bad thing, but like kind of like, it's bad because all the Brian Eno jokes were valid.
Right, well, like it'll go right over your head. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so let's say Star Wars.
Let's do Star Wars because generally pop culture knowledge is not my forte. So
yes.
Okay. How do we all meet? Posting zines to each other, an old decrepit forum, a Twitter hashtag, a quiet private Discord, or something else. I was going to say, no, this one I would choose one person. So I'm going to choose Ryan to answer this one, but anyone else can chip in.
I want to say, let's go with a Discord, like a very quiet Discord.
I thought for sure you were going to say forum.
Right? Well, actually, because if it was a long time ago that we originally...
Yeah, we get to define that. Like, actually, I'm going to ask the next question, actually, to Amelia. What year is it now?
Yeah. Let's say right now it's like 2019.
Okay, 2019. That's great.
Okay.
The good old times.
Let's go with like an old like Star Wars fan forum.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like something like Delphi or something, one of those kind of like weird kind of things which barely operate. Okay, each player will now pick a role from one of these followings. I'm the moderator, who is a responsible figure in the community, and your options are: the old guard, has been around since the start; the obsessive, cares about one thing in the fandom specifically; the troll, trouble with a capital troll; newbie, new and boundless in enthusiasm, or burned out, love has curdled to hate.
Ooh. Yeah, I think I want to be burned out.
Okay. Great. Ryan, anything particularly appealing?
I'm thinking maybe the old guard.
That sounds fun. Like that implies all three of us have been around forever. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm the moderator, you're burned out, and you're like the, this old guard. We've been, this is why we're still on this old forum, isn't it?
Yeah. So much back in my day.
There's no kids around here. I'm not just really hating the new Disney shows or something.
Right, yeah. Just all of us have an absolute abhorrence for the memes. No memes. No memes allowed.
Baby Yoda's ludicrous. The fact I've written Star Wars comics makes this all very loaded, especially to recorded. Okay, Ryan, ask you this question. How did I become, as in me, the moderator, come to be an authority in the community? Was it because I set up this fan culture infrastructure? Am I the authoritative and most definitive voice in fandom? Am I the loudest and most persistent voice in fandom, or something else?
I think you're the one that stepped up when things started getting bigger on the forum. Like the forums were getting more popular, and the original creator of the forum said, I need help moderating this because, prequels are starting to come out and
Oh, God.
Goodness
We know it's going to
gracious,
get ugly.
We need
Yeah.
some moderators.
Yeah. Help me, Kieron Gillen. You're my only hope.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
So I think you stepped up to take that role because they were looking for volunteers, right?
Yeah.
And then ultimately, like over time, you became kind of like the moderator of all the other mods.
I just like persistent, and I put the hours in and just climb. You know, I'm a grafter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amelia, what do people say about me behind my back?
Ooh.
I don't even like Star Wars anymore. I've alienated all my real world friends. I'm sweetness and light, but my mean streak is brutal. Or something else.
I think they're going to say that you've like abandoned all your real life friends. You've put in so much work to become this head moderator that like everybody sort of figures there's no way that you could be putting in this much work and have any life outside of this.
Yeah, I'm always online. If anyone asks the question, I immediately answer. Yeah,
right. Yeah. Yeah, the moment you're tagged. And this is obviously before smartphones, if the prequels are just coming out. So like, there's no way that you're leaving your weird basement computer office.
I love that none of us has met up before now as well. You know, and that's kind of like, you know, that's quite weird for someone. It's about nearly 30 years now this forum has been running.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ryan, people say that one of this group is my favourite. Who of the group is the favourite? Obviously, this question works better with more players. But like, is it you, Ryan, or Amelia, who is my favourite?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I'm going to guess based off of the very little information that we have right now, probably me being the old guard.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not me. It's not like if I'm the one that's turned to hatred, it's like, why are you still here? Please just leave.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. But Amelia, why do you think that I actually am so into the old guard? Like, what is it about the old guard that I?
Ooh, I think it's that they have like this very deep well of knowledge that because they've been here so long, they know what they're talking about, so they can all back up their opinions with the info.
Yeah. That's cool. Right, okay. Ryan.
Yeah.
I was working at the one thing I didn't read out. At any point, if you know your name, just say, or any other biographical details, just spit it out. It sort of defined me quite well, as I'm really isolated. I'm online a lot. I'm a classic basement dweller in this kind of way, but also kind of like, you know, dedicated.
Yeah. Okay,
oh God. You were in the fandom right at the beginning. What's your origin story? Tell me how you got into Star Wars way back in the day.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to guess that back then, first joining the forum was teenage years, give or take. And this was like my first foray onto the internet, and getting kind of that exposure to pop culture as a whole. And I think after that is when I started like examining some of the cool stuff in pop culture. And like before then, I think before then, my character was very, I want to say sheltered a bit, not really being able to see all the cool stuff.
Yeah. I don't really, like, especially that late 90s internet. I think I'm speaking about my age here, but like how it generally opened the world to people. The idea that, oh my God, people have think about this stuff, you know, and that kind of, that's really very true. Amelia, what was your breaking point with this fandom? What was the thing that made you snap?
It was the people that had only watched the movies.
Yes.
You know, like I'm over here playing Galactic Battlegrounds real-time strategy game and you're not. Yes. So obviously, like, you don't care as much. You're not reading the comics. You're not building your little houses in your droid army. It's ridiculous.
Casuals. Yeah. It's interesting how much you actually must have dedicated to like really stay on top of all that. That's but it's actually because it implies you're actually quite it almost implies you're still into the stuff, but you're not into the fandom,
right?
Which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the people I don't like, which is why I remain connected with all of them, yelling at how much I don't like them.
Oh no, I feel for you. Oh, poor you. That's an awful trap.
I'm the worst.
Right. Why have you stayed in this fandom so long? Okay, there's some options here. In real life, you're isolated and you have no social capital. Here, you're somebody. It's a safe place away from the horror of your real life. It's comfortable. I don't like change, even if it's inevitable. or something else?
I think it's a safe space for this character. It's somewhere that they can go and feel accepted, and also, like, you know, the stuff that they talk about and they bring to the conversation is not just immediately dismissed.
Yeah. So, like, does that imply that in your real life that's not true?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least back then it wasn't true. It was probably some very restrictive parentage happening in this person's life. And then this was kind of their escape.
Oh, yeah. Specifically, the question is, why have you stayed in so long, though? So it's definitely something that has to be still true now.
Something still true now? Yeah.
Yeah, as in, like, are you still kind of like that
I
to some
think
degree?
that's probably, like, I think this person only feels that safety, like, in the online community presence. Like, and they're not so sure of themselves in person.
Okay, that's cool.
Well, I think it's also a place where, like, that particular expertise is valued, whereas like having that expertise, especially about something like Star Wars, outside of these four is like, okay, nerd. Like, it's not, you know, like, even if you have that expertise, nobody's going to be like, wow, what a valuable skill set to have.
Yeah. It's that kind of, no one's impressed if you speak Klingon, you know, that kind of sort of, you know, that's not okay. Sorry to any Klingon speakers in the listeners.
I think it's cool.
I think it's cool too.
I do too.
It's not, you know, particularly useful on a resume, but you do you.
Okay, Amelia. Now, this question will have to tweak a bit because you've sort of defined it slightly differently. But why do you stay in the fandom of something you now hate? You like the people; they're the only real friends you ever had.
Yeah.
You want to bring it all crashing down. It's just another disappointment. It was the only thing that gave you joy. I secretly hope the joy will come back, or something else.
Interesting. I think it's sort of become like this personal mission that, like, I need to get people to understand why all the other parts of this are important, and why, like, you know, valuing all of the, you know, the tie-in properties and all that kind of stuff, like why they matter.
That's
and
nice.
So it's like, it's become this mission to force people to, like,
very good
understand. But I think in my brain, it's like the artistry. You need to value the people working on it. But, like, really, it's just coming across as, like, gatekeepy, gross.
Yeah,
but,
I think you're kind of this evangelical aspect to you, which is like,
yeah. Like, you can't just go to church on Christmas and Easter. You can't just watch the movies. No.
Oh dear.
I hate this person so much.
Ryan, you have a story that you tell to cement your early fan cred. What's the story?
Oh boy. Let's see. I'm gonna say that I was, like, the first one to figure out a specific, like, formula for a Star Wars game that was out there that, like, people were trying to figure out, like, how does this thing work? And I was the one that was like, oh yeah, I mathed it out. Here's how you do this, and here's how you can predict what the results are going to be. You just plug in your stats to this thing, and it'll pop out exactly what you should expect.
You worked out the secret math for some, like, Star Wars, like, sort of galaxies or whatever be around circa then.
Yeah, so there was, like, some sort of video game or something like that back then, either Knights of the Old Republic or whatever, right? And
this is what the question is like. I was always expecting an answer like, oh yeah, I used to date someone from the movies or something like that. I was like sort of going a bit meta for a second. Like, when I'm reading through because I haven't read these for a while, I'm thinking, like, what would my choice be? You know what I mean? This is quite. Anyway, that's great.
Mine's like, I've got an algorithm. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Amelia, however, how do you know that story isn't completely true? Why is that story slightly nonsense? Or what dark secret has Ryan's persona done to take credit for something he wasn't really his responsibility for?
I think it was like a whole so, like, I think there was, like, a previous forum or, like, some kind of offshoot of this group or something, and it was a whole bunch of people that worked on it. Ryan's character is the only one that's, like, still active in this current forum, and so is able to take credit for all of it. But really, it was like 15 or 20 people that worked on this to like figure all of it out.
Were you part of that forum?
Yes.
Cool. It's maybe like, for listeners, it's like occasionally, like these questions are all from the sheet, but there's also like the game's meant to be asking more questions. And the fact if either of you get any ideas, please chip in. But like following your curiosity, that's definitely the fun thing. Oh, I like that. Anyway, used to be really tight, Amelia. Your persona used to be really tight with another persona. You fell out and have only recently started talking again. Which persona were you tight with? So it's like it can be me as well in this case.
Yeah, I feel like given what we just said, it should be Ryan, just because like we did work together on this thing, and then because you've been taking credit for all of it, like we've had our falling out. I don't know why I haven't spilled the beans and told everybody yet.
Right. That's
a
good question, isn't it?
We'll find out. That's an interesting question that I'd like to answer at some point. Like, why, if I'm so mean and crappy to everybody, like, why have I not? Maybe I'm holding it for blackmail or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Superiority. There's like it's interesting. Okay, just started talking again. However, Ryan, what have you done which would break the friendship up if they ever found out?
Oh,
what's even
interesting,
worse?
because this didn't.
What have I done?
What have you done? Which was like you've rebuilt this friendship due to some kind of row in the past we've defined. What have you done which is like even worse and would break you up in a much worse way?
Oh boy.
This is so intense with just 2 players because it's obviously just going back. Like, with 5 players, it'd be a different kind of like vibe. But as it is, it's like the forum drama is very intensive.
Yeah, I mean, this is because our last one we had 4 people, and so the difference with 3 people even is just.
It's very interesting. Okay, so I think my character is kind of a computer nerd of sorts. Yeah. It sounds like they are leaning that way. I think, gosh, now you're gonna make me make a bad.
We're forcing
person
Ryan to like make a bad. Ryan doesn't do like it has taken 5 years for Ryan to like make morally complex characters because it's really tough for him. So like I just want everybody to clap for Ryan how well he's doing.
Be terrible.
Yes.
So
I'm thinking that this character, like, got the personal information of everybody on the forums. Like addresses, phone numbers, all that sort of stuff. Like trying to get into the back end of the forums. You got the email
addresses of our printers.
Yep, pretty much.
Have you gone for a reason? It's like
I think just to see if I could do it.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Like, now I have it, and I'm still holding on to it for some reason.
Yeah. It's interesting. This is getting quite like it's forum level politics, which is really because like obviously the questions could be really personal, you know, but like this is much more like you betrayed everyone by doing that, not just in fact, especially me because I'm the bloody moderator.
Yeah.
How dare you break my coding? Back off my PHP. That's great. I love that. Okay. Like we sort of defined a bit of Ryan's, so like this is now you got an idea of who you are. Like I reckon I'm gonna call myself Duncan. I would be about like I reckon I'm a similar age to Ryan, so like about 40. I think that's like 40, mid 40s. It'd be to do the math.
Around
18 in 98, so we're somewhere in the 40s. I work in. No one knows.
Oh.
I think that's really. I think the level of mystery for me is quite interesting, and that's kind of why you want to meet me. Like because I never appear to be working. Like,
right.
You know, I'm answering questions about Star Wars on a forum. Like, that says element of mystery to me. In fact, like, I think it's some people don't even know what what gender do I present as. Like, there's some kind of questions even that about me. I think.
Yeah.
What about you, Amelia? Like, what's your character? What's your persona like?
I think I want to say that I'm actually in real life like a state senator.
Love it. I love that as a power play.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. I've kept these things like very separate from each other, but obviously like Ryan knows. Like that's the other thing is like Ryan's character would know because you have all our information.
You've got a government email on your forum and you just realize like government, Senator Amelia. Well, oh my God, the fact you're a senator, there's loads of senators in Star Wars as well. That's great. I love it.
Right. So yeah, I feel like that's like my username is like Senator, I don't know, whatever. Because I actually am it's just a state senator though.
Yeah, it's still impressive. Yeah. Like I never leave my basement. That's impressive.
Right.
Okay, so the fact this is a con, are you going to be in sort of semi-disguise, hoping no one knows? Because it's going to be it'll be out of state is the thing. So like, but you must know there's a chance people would recognize you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm really hoping that like, you know, wearing some like non-business suit kind of clothes will be enough to really, I don't think people like pay that much attention to their state senators, hopefully. Yeah.
Did you consider a Princess Leia disguise?
No, because then if people did find me out, that would be a whole thing. So I have to dress like normal, but not too normal, but not, you know, it's a whole calculation of like.
In the Phantom Menace, like, of course. Sorry. Yeah,
I was going to say, but like, you know, and then there's that whole like political play of like, okay, would it be good if people saw me at a convention? Like, is it a totally normal person? Like, look, she's just like us. She likes Star Wars. Or would it like, you know, just be really bad for me?
I want to know more, but this can go on forever. What were your politics? Like that kind of like, I somehow like in my head, I'm usually thinking, I reckon for some reason they're progressive and they're really mean to people on the internet about Star Wars.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, yeah, I'd like to think that I'm like, you know, we should listen to everybody. We should, you know, like we need to take people's opinions seriously. We need to understand that not everyone is the same. While online, I'm like, you are the worst. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love this. Ryan, you got any more details you want to throw about your person with the senator's email?
Yep.
Oh man, I want to play these characters so badly now. It's hilarious.
This is what happens on our show. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Right. I think what had become of my character is they became, you know, a network security tech and like got really good at it.
I hope you have a bunch of government contracts.
And side hacks as like part of the anonymous group.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. That's I think it's more than enough. Okay, I'm going to ask Amelia for this one. What's the name of the fantasy world where our games were set? Was it called the Mirror Worlds? The Dungeon of Obscure Fandom Reference? We can choose what random fandom reference that is. Mm-hmm. Shadow Life or something else?
Oh, why? I can't recall the word. I want it to be like based on the like the garbage pit with the. Why can't I remember?
The Sarlacc pit?
No, but like where like when they go down the garbage chute and then they like get eaten. What is the monster called?
Oh yeah, the okay. There's
I like almost had it.
Yeah, I've done it professionally and I can't remember that.
Ryan is Googling it. I can see.
It's okay. The internet will save us.
Like for some reason, Dagobah is the only word that I can think of, and obviously that's not it.
Yeah.
Dianoga.
See, it wasn't that far off though. It's the
Dungeon of Dianoga.
Yeah,
that's pretty good, actually.
It is pretty good.
That's what I want it to be.
Also, go to the Dungeon Dianoga. There's lots of like encounters. I mean, you're going to be wading. This adventure should solely be through like the swamp constantly. I love it.
Yeah.
This is really good stuff. Okay, I'm asking everyone this question. This is the first con you've all been at together. What sacrifices have you made to be here? And I've got some example answers. Like a little sacrifice, to be honest. I've got a good, boring job. I've had to save 2 years for this. Even so, I'm sleeping on someone else's floor. A lot of favours and babysitting money to keep the kids safe. I had to quit my job. Yeah, I know. I'm sharing a room with someone I'm sharing a room with someone I absolutely despise, or something else.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'll answer first, actually, because this one goes to me too. I reckon
we're going to learn something here.
I'm missing a funeral.
Oh,
dang.
Ryan, Amelia, anyone want to jump on that?
I was going to say, I think that it's like happening during, you know, when we're like on our like legislative recess. So like it's not that big of a deal, but I am sort of making that like political calculation of, is this a good idea to go out and publicly do this, you know? So there is the potential danger of people finding out how big of a nerd I am, or again, potentially connecting. No, because then they would put that in campaign ads, like, oh, she doesn't take life seriously. You know,
like I'm not that senator. What are you talking about?
What? Yeah,
it's like obviously full Mandalorian armor or something.
Right. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
I'm a stormtrooper. It's fine.
This is not the senator you're looking for. What about you, Ryan? What have you sacrificed to be here?
Let's see. I think there was a I have no idea how like anonymous works, but I think there was like almost like a sting operation level thing that was supposed to happen, and I was a key component of it.
And you decided to go to a Star Wars convention instead.
Because I'm getting kind of tired of it.
Really?
So I'm letting a lot of anonymous people down. I also find it hilarious that I'm a part of Anonymous when I'm the only anonymous person on the forum to myself.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
That is cool. Right, in which case, that's the end of Persona Gen. As excitable in Die that we've all made people, and they've turned into you know what I mean? Like, these are very clearly very different to how people you get from running rituals.
Right.
But like, there's still like obviously stuff we would mind. Like, I would have, as a GM, I would be the kind of just the idea of being knee deep in water for the whole thing is great. The anonymous stuff is great. The senator stuff is great. You would probably end up riffing the Star Wars structure somehow. Like someone sending you a message at the start and all that, you know, like immediately you've got so much great stuff to riff on. And Star Wars is famous enough that everyone can sort of run with it. Anyway, What I was saying, if we're playing reality, I would say, great, what we're going to do is step away from the table. I'm going to come back. Actually, I'll say we're playing the game in my hotel room. That's the sort of setting. We're going to step back. When we step back to the table, we all turn the camera back on or whatever. We're going to be speaking in character as our people. Like, do we want to do that, or like, or are we want to do full embodiment, or we just want to sort of kind of go onto the character generation? Or
yeah, I mean, I would like to just go on to like finding out like what character type are all of these people.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
I
I have a name for my character now.
Oh, okay.
Alvin Jenkins.
Alvin Jenkins and Amelia.
Why?
Alvin. Let me just write down the names quickly. Alvin and have we got a name for the senator?
Let's call her Leah.
I'd say, like, are you kind of like, if you're about the same age as us, you could have been named Leah by a parent easily. Yes. You know, it's not. It's absolutely not. It's obviously a silly name, but like you having parents who are into Star Wars is a thing. Yeah. What
that is how I personally got into Star Wars, because my dad's a huge Star Wars fan.
Leah, it's so funny. Senator Leah. I bet people already make jokes as well.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know what I mean? Like, okay. So the shorter way of doing this is I basically, instead of like doing the this is something that got dropped from the manual, but it's like, actually we'll put it back in again, I think, if we ever do a reprint. It's basically so, instead of doing the full kind of sit down, we do a short text section. You all arrive and sit around the table, you make small talk. You see people in the flesh and things are actively strange. You sit down, and the GM, in my case, Duncan, starts speaking to you and explains the game and says, okay. So explains the game, says this is a game that was, some kids disappeared in the 90s, apparently, and they were playing this game and they came up 2 years later. I know it's a bit weird. I think we should play it. Weirdly, you all decide to agree. The GM, Duncan, opens the box and gets out some dice. And of course, that's his audio podcast. It doesn't work in this kind of way. But I would go, he picks up the dice and I would offering it to Leia. Leia, this is the only D4 in the game. There is no D4 like this ever. Use it well, dictator. And I pass it to you.
That's twice now.
Yeah, that's what I say. Alvin, this is the only D10 in the game. There's only no other D10 like this. Use it well, Neo. And I pass it to you.
Ooh.
Yes.
That's a good one. Nice.
And I pick up the D20, and this one is mine. Okay. And then he passes out the character sheets, and we now pick our characters. Like, to sort of step away, like, for me, it's like the dictator and Neo are kind of, the obvious is the wrong word, but like they both felt strong Neo and dictator picks. Like, you know, Leia's all about the relationship of power and control, and if only people would listen to me, like obey me, you know, and that's like dictator straight through, and all the hacking is just straight Neo. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
in a good way. Like, so like they were quite I was quite panicked because I realized, oh my god, this one doesn't, because some of the actual Persona classes give you, you give this archetype this dice. And this, I was like, oh no, we have to actually GM now. But this one was like more freeform, and it's like, no, you made it very easy for me. These are real strong choices, I think. So the actual character sheets are kind of like Powered by the Apocalypse ones. They're downloadable from ORD sites, and basically they include pretty much the entire rules for the core rules for the game, and certainly the core rules for each class. The ritual sheets, basically, first thing we do is we fill in our names. And when I say your name, I mean the persona name. The characters don't have a name because, like, people can add one, but we try to encourage people to think the persona is the real person. And it gets, if you start thinking, I've become an elf, you start role-playing an elf, and that's a slightly trickier thing to do. I'll probably sit down and make the characters read the class. What I'll actually do in most cases is make them read the text at the top of their character sheet aloud to the group. Which I will do myself, actually. Let's actually do it completely.
Sure.
Yeah. Master. Okay, I'd read this bit. Who rules? The master is the magic user as a reality manipulator. Sometimes you change the laws of physics. Sometimes you change the laws of the game. Sometimes you change the laws of fiction. The rules rule, and you rule the rules. And you never, ever cheat. Ever. Okay, this is the GM section. We can be honest, they cheat all the time. These rules are very meta, I think, here. Like, this is suitably Star Wars. What about you, Leia? What did you all say?
You read a sad story. You cry. Do you think that's sinister, as if someone has artificially taken over your emotions? Of course not. That's just what art is. Anyone who's ever met a dictator would disagree. By performing, they alter other people's emotional states. Dictators play people like a musician plays a harp. They can pluck the strings. They can snap them. They're like bards, if everyone was petrified of bards.
Yes, the PG-rated cut.
Yes, no, I'll fix that for you, Ryan.
All right. And for the Neo, adventurers love gold. With their propensity for taking anything that isn't nailed down makes them all thieves, which makes the classical fantasy prejudice against rogues a little odd. They're all at it. Why do rogues get the glances? But anyone who's ever met one knows why people are suspicious about the Neo. There's a special kind of gold, and the Neo's magical technology needs to be activated by this every day. If they can't find enough, then all of their gifts mean nothing. They can't skip between shadows, dance through the sky, or punch a hole through a fallen's head from half a mile away. Adventurers all want gold, but no one needs it like a Neo.
That's great. And it's like reading it aloud just sort of gives everyone the buy-in. And especially if you're doing the full kind of persona in-character one, you get to do the in-character response to it. Like characters being confused by like, this seems very nonsense, or like, this is very overwritten. It's like, anyway, first thing we do is as a group, we'll go through and everyone do stats. Stats are really simple. Everyone starts as 2. You get 2 points to increase any stat by. Like the stats are the classic D&D stats used broadly for the classic D&D things. Like strength is like melee and lifting stuff, dexterity, etc., etc. The ones which are underlined are the stats which are probably the most important for your class. Like I'm the master and I've got my intelligence and constitution underlined, so I'm going to set both of them to 3. So I've got 2 on everything apart from constitution and intelligence. I feel like one note about die is like it's worth remembering the stats. 2 is like everyone you know is probably got stat 2 in everything they have. Like level 3 stats are kind of like pretty much as good as a professional athlete on Earth. Like you're probably a member of Mensa or whatever if you've got intelligence, and no one on the planet Earth has a stat of 4. Like it's one of the things when thinking about how it feels to be these characters. Like this is the kind of like super heroic abilities you have. That's really genuinely significant. And of course, when I'm GMing it, I always lean into that as well in terms of like, if I could suddenly like I don't have any physical strength, it would make my head explode.
Yeah, I mean, I went ahead and put a 3 in charisma because
that's good.
That seems
Classic.
correct. And then I also put a 3 in wisdom.
Great.
Just because I wanted to be different from last time where I put it in intelligence.
Interesting. Looking at the Neo, I'm gonna put a. You know what? I'm curious. I think I'm gonna put a 4 in Dex.
Nice. Like min-max it.
Yeah, just go full decks.
Yeah,
I love
that
it.
means you're full Triss from Blade Runner. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, then you've got secondary stats, then they're generally filled in. Basically, Guard is equal to your Dex, Health is equal to your Con, Willpower is your Wisdom plus Intelligence, and Defense is set by your gear shortly. First, then we pick Equipment. Equipment is basically you've got a pick list. And basically you just pick things from the list. I've got a choice between quarterstaff, handgun, or a huge tome with various abilities. I'm going to choose an elegant handgun, and but I get to make something else, all the visually. So I'm going to make it be like a Star Wars blaster.
Perfect.
Like it's that. It's cool, and everyone gets make their own pick from the pick list. It's worth it. One of the things about the actual, to step back and show what we're doing here, the fact that the GM also has a character sheet means that the GM can show what to do. As in I'm going to pick this and this, therefore teaching people how to pick stuff. That's one of the small things in it.
I love this so much because I have a lightsaber.
This is great. The great joy of making it Star Wars means we can just lean into the Star Wars a bit.
I know.
Right.
I've got 2 lightsabers. One's a dagger lightsaber, and one's a regular, short sword lightsaber.
That's great. What about Leia?
I'm gonna go with a dagger and a ranged weapon.
That's great.
So I think, I'll have a cool looking dagger and then also a blaster.
Right. Next section is your look. Firstly, it normally defines your defense. And I think I've got defense 0, so I'll fill that in. My options are wizard robe straight out of a 1980s kids fantasy cartoon, killer suit straight out of a 1980s corporate bad guy, or fetish wear straight out of a 1990s vampire LARP, or something else. I think it has to be something else. I think I'm a good guy, don't I? So I actually,
obviously.
What I think it is the of course, we're not actually going to do the whole go to the die bit, are we? We're just going to since we're not going to do that. What I think I'm going to say Jedi robes. That's going to be cool. I'm going to have just cool Jedi robes, keep it simple. But when I have the whole magical transformation in die, it reveals I'll have full Darth Maul painting beneath the mask. So I'll throw back the hood and I'll be kind of I'm not a good guy after all. That'll be the moment, and my eyes will be on fire because they always are. That's what my look would be. Amelia, what about Leia?
So I'm gonna go with something else because I imagine I want to look like Admiral Holdo, like Laura Dern's character in the newer Star Wars. That's kind of the vibe I'm going for.
That's nice. Yes, Senator.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go for it.
And you've got a little pew pew gun as well. That's great.
Yeah.
I went with a billowing black cloak and sinister scarlet eyes.
That's good.
And I think my 2 lightsabers are opposite of each other. The big one is red, and the smaller one is green.
That's nice. It's one of the things about running dice, and we do these kind of brief descriptions here, but when you get the big magical girl transformation moment in the first session, that's my favourite bit in the first session every single time, because everybody goes for it, because everyone wants the stupid moment.
Right.
And there's a lot of great there's so many billowing cloaks going on in this game. It's we're all going walking into the wind all the time. It's going to be good stuff.
It's very good.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the whole first page. The second page, since that's kind of standard, all the people have the same structure. The way Die's second sheet is, all the classes have their own really specific, unique stuff on this, and it's completely different for every class. Luckily, you only really have one choice each to make, or 2 choices, I think, maybe for. Actually, 1 choice for Dictator, 2 choices for Neo, if I remember rightly. And my rules, I don't have to I have no picks here, so I'm just going to read my rules, and everyone else can sit down and read their rules and make their picks. Basically, what the Neo has is basically you got 5 gifts on the ritual sheet. Which are basically cybernetic powers, which you have to power up by fair gold. And I believe you get to pick an upgrade for each. I think each one has multiple upgrades, or some maybe have 1. So I'm saying I guess because I haven't ran the rituals sheet for a while. Let me just general check. Because I've been running the pre-gens or the full games stuff. It's tell you what, it's it was so great being at Gen Con and running die 3 times in 3 days. It was, what I mean? It reminded me how much I love the game in that way. And how much players are great and, it's delightful. Yeah. So you have to pick which gift and which upgrade. And the Dictator just picks which emotion.
Oh, and I'd have to pick what it looks like when I use it.
Oh yeah, of course. You'll tell.
So I went with admiration as my emotion. And then for my tell, I went with strange facial scars appear, because that just felt like a very Star Wars thing that might happen.
It's definitely the thing about the tater that is in game. People know if you use the voice. That's explicitly it's not a subtle weapon. Like even if like that's kind of, it's a very subtle weapon in some ways, but not in others. That's great.
Yeah, and my last one, I was like, she became kind of translucent whenever. Yeah.
That's nice.
It's good.
Ryan, what about Alvin? What gift do you pick?
So Alvin's gift is going to be the energy weapon.
Yeah, of course.
Because
he needed more weapons.
I know, right? So I think like the lightsabers are mainly for show until they're activated, right?
Yeah.
Like they work as kind of prop lightsabers, I guess. And once they're activated, they become real.
Yeah. I think it's one of those, as a GM, I'd probably encourage you to say, oh no, they work as lightsabers, but like when they get powered up, they become much more obviously lightsabery.
That's
I mean, much cooler. Like, because you want to be effective without them, if you know what I mean. But like that sounds really cool. I love the kind of like the full Final Fantasy 7 sort of vibe.
Absolutely. And I chose the Phantom upgrade it for your close combat attacks gain special. This individual hit, not the whole attack, bypasses guard.
That's great. That means you're really good at it's like the classic.
Yeah.
So that's not going to work on a podcast, but I just mimed. You know what it sounds like.
Right. Totally.
And that is actually now we've finished as they're doing persona. We finished doing characters. What we do now in the game is I would ask everyone to take the dice. Hold them before you in a closed fist and close your eyes. Lower it to the table. On the count of 3, I want you to keep your eyes closed. And when I tell you, open them. 1, 2, 3. And then I would say you're somewhere else. You're somewhere else. The hotel room has disappeared. Everything is dripping. The floor is actually covered with a low level of slime. As you sort of realize, it's awful. You're actually dressed in exactly the same clothes as normal. You all sit around the table. Since you're playing around, not actually the table, you're playing around the bed. The dice are the only thing which is coloured in the room. They actually are floating in front of you. You all sit around. You all sort of stand in this muck looking at each other. And Duncan just has a look of like delight and wonder and goes, "It worked." And he grabs his dice and transformed. He becomes this kind of like this beautiful Jedi Knight who, when he flicks back his hood, is clearly the full on Darth Sidious kind of like vibe to, or Darth Maul rather, the facial expression. And he smiles. It says, "It's all worth it," and he disappears, stepping into a shadow. You're left alone, dressed in your normal clothes in this weird dank affair, and you see a tentacle sort to come out of the gunk, and then we would stop. Like we'll stop there, yeah.
Oh no!
Oh no! I know. As you're describing this like wet dripping, I'm like, why did I suggest that? Why did I say that? Why was that the first thing that came to my mind?
Yeah. Because you like your characters to suffer.
I do.
I would normally, like, if I was running that properly, I'd let you actually wave in the water and role play each other a bit and complain about what's how people think is really interesting. Because some people are like, "Oh, I'm tripping," or like, "Oh, I'm or like, you know, or is this some kind of VR thing?" Or some people, "Oh, I'm in a magical world," or some people just think they're hallucinating.
Yeah.
And then some people literally go sort of catatonic and refuse to engage with the dice, which is a really fun choice. You know what I mean? Like, there's lots of, and that kind of, so you let them role play and then you sick a monster on them to force them to see what happens.
Oh,
so that's kind of that's how the first session works.
Oh, it's lovely. And
it's also like setting monsters to what happens. It's also, here's a really good way to explain the rules, because it's not a real threat. It's that kind of like, okay, now you're going to roll a dice pool. Now you're going to, you know, yada. And we build up towards the reveal that, oh my God, we're in our D&D world. Or in this case, the Star Wars meets D&D world.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that what you wanted? Is that okay?
That's absolutely perfect.
Amazing.
That was amazing. I love these terrible people.
I know.
It's funny.
So much.
Generally, like, as the GM, like, not GM, as the designer, like, I'm still surprised by how it's like, we haven't had that conversation. I don't know exactly how I'd make that game. Like, I think I'm missing my mum's funeral. I think I'm here because I think I can bring my mum back. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just a game about tragedy and loss. And of course, Darth Vader's whole story is about like losing his parents, really, or losing their children and all that, you know?
Right.
So like all that kind of Star Wars stuff would tie in. Like, I think I know you hacked us. I think I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's so much really great, and there's a great visuals. The politics is amazing. Like it's not just be gunk; it's also gonna because it's the gunk of politics. You know, like so much good stuff.
Yes.
Oh, everything just ties together so nicely.
Yeah. Good work, you. Like really, both of you. It's good.
I love it. Oh, I love how different this was in our last one too.
I was nervous because I don't think I've actually ran that in the full game, or at least I haven't ran it for so long I've forgotten about it. So all the questions were surprises to me. And I was like, and it's definitely at the end I thought, oh no, you're right, I should have had faith in myself. Like, you know, that kind of like, all right, I was in good. Sorry, I don't normally say good stuff about my work, but I genuinely feel surprised by it working.
That's a thing that we love to do on the show is take game designers and be like, let us tell you how great this thing works. It's our favorite hobby.
Hooray.
So one of our questions in here, we've talked a little bit about, you know, kind of where things came from. But we wanted to know, like, what inspirations did you draw upon for character mechanics in this game? I know that you've listed in various places, like different media and things that have inspired you. Where did you find some of that stuff?
I mean, Die is absolutely a love song to RPGs. Like, all my love songs are kind of sad because my favorite love songs are sad songs. But like, this is, I mean, like, you know, that bit where you all pretend to be your characters around the table? That's me doing a miniature Nordic LARP. You know what I mean? Like, I just throw a tiny Nordic embodiment LARP in the middle of the game. And that's just because, why not? I mean, the whole end game is, you know, the fact it's very clean. It's very precise. You have, everyone gets a vote. It has to be unanimous. Dead people don't get votes. And there's infinite amounts of ways that could go down because, you know, it doesn't, like, some people are just going to fight and other people have a big therapy session, and that's great. I really don't know. That's me absolutely 100% just doing reality TV shows. Like that, you know what I mean? Like that's how they work. And reality TV shows have these very simple rules, and they become interesting because people are different.
Yeah,
you know, so the people are the variable, the rules are simple, and therefore people can understand them. So I'm choosing two, like, perhaps more unusual, like, to get more basic stuff. It's like I kind of wanted the game to feel like something a precocious teenager could have maybe designed in 1991 if they've cheated a lot with time travel. Like, so it's like Sol is the character Sol is the person who designed Die the game in the comic and the metafiction of Die, and he obviously hated D&D because he was a pretentious, like, 16-year-old D&D player.
For sure.
Not D&D, RPG player. But what we'd have been playing then would have probably been a load of dice pool systems. So, like, for the meta reason, it's probably going to have to be a dice pool system. But it's also, so I was looking at stuff, and there, it also, I was trying to do stuff because intellectually speaking, I don't like math. Like, I'm fine with math.
Hard agree.
But so the way it's very simple. It's 4+ is a success, and it's all about object movement. So it's not looking at numbers; it's looking at patterns. So the dice is objects. Like, a success is difficulty is removing successes. So that kind of, like, you're not no numbers have to be added together. Always adding dice. You're moving physical objects together, which for people who are bad at math is better according to the research. Like, you know, so that kind of, like, that was at least part of the sort of thing going in there. That's just like, I think I'm trying to think of the other kind of, like, it's less of an influence and more a goal. I kind of wanted each class to be mysterious, because you sort of see that with the character sheets, or mysterious to each other. Yeah. Like, the front is simple. Like, everyone is not simple. It's similar. All the characters have the same choices, basically. So the core mechanics are, well, okay, we've got this. This is something. Roll dice, 4+, yeah, whatever. And then the back half of the sheet is different for everybody in quite radical ways. I'm throwing it. It's not like hyper. I don't want to oversell how radical it is, but, like, they are all working in bespoke mechanics. Like, the Dictator's dice pool works differently. What the Neo is trying to roll, you know, all those kind of things. Because I want other characters to be mysterious, because mysterious to each other also means magical. In the same way that the GM, like, has final say, means the world is magical. Like, especially with the persona, like, the GM could ask, okay, tell me about your grandmother's house. Like, you know something is going to happen with the grandmother's house, but you don't know what. But you also you get to define everything about the grandmother's house. So you have incredible power, but you also have a level of uncertainty. Like, and that's kind of what I was trying to do all the way through. And I was like, I kind of stepped away from it in the end. Like, early on, I wanted all the dice to be used in a different way. Like, and in the end, I just not wimped out. I kind of realized people just like adding the dice to the dice pool. Like at the point, like, you know, the emotion night didn't actually add the D8 to the dice pool, and you know, and various other people didn't either. And it became like, no, it's just fun. Like there's nothing there's not fun about. Oh, I've got the D8 in the dice pool. Why wouldn't you?
Right.
But like it's you know, stuff like no one duplicates, but at the same time the structure is the same. So like like when we're in the structure is the same, everyone has like these basic low level verbs, like something like more of a classic trad RPG. Like in the case of the Neo, you have, you know, you've got your blast sword, your blast, you know, you've got the gift, you've got the blast gun, you've got to upgrade, it does this. These kind of verbs, which are quite simple, and they work in like the way an RPG normally would work. And then you have the high level narrative level abilities, which would change the plot in big, huge, stupid ways. And in the case of the Neo, the overcharge. So you're throwing gold and saying what you're trying to do. And there's no limits on that. If you're the god binder, whatever the god, you know, you just make a deal. And so that structure's the same for all the classes, with the exception of the dictator. But that's a different story. But the specifics are very different. Like the full passing the GM the dice to get out of trouble is different from a god binder bartering with a god to what deal can I make to get what we need. Is different from the player master just say, I'm going to cheat, I'm going to do this and break the rules, and then seeing if they get away with it or not. And if they don't get away with it, they have a miniature trial where the judges of all reality decide whether they're going to be killed or not, or some, you know, depending how bad it is. You know, these are all fundamentally meaty and fun and narrative, but also very different. And that's not really, I think influence is tricky. I'm talking about goals again, but yeah, I should try like give you another mechanic. Like obviously PBTA was a bunch, but I think so much about for the Queen being a game existing solely by questions. Of course, that was influenced by the Beast. Like if you go back further, but like for the Queen, with the idea of like this forest of narratives emerging from conversation and just simple questions. That's absolutely Persona Gen. You know what I mean? Like kind of like, I think I died before I played for the Queen. In fact, no, I definitely did. But like after playing for the Queen, it absolutely narrowed my thinking really sharply.
Yeah. It's really interesting, like contrasting the two sessions that we had for this series, the one with our previous guests and one here. And how different the worlds felt that we were going into, how different like the scenarios of each of the personas felt going into it and everything. I can see like this game becoming exactly what you want it to be. Like you said in reality TV was kind of like somewhat of an influence for some of that. I can see that being like, we're reality TV fans in a reality TV Discord, and we get together, and now our world has that, like the flashbacks. No, they're not flashbacks; they're confessionals.
Yeah.
Where the GM, the master, is asking you the question in the game, and you're still in it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you mine this. That's what I mean. Like the structure of die is quite like you have a set opening, you gather together, you play a game, you go to die, you got a set end, you decide whether to go home or not. And that means anything between is game. Because the way stories works is stories are basically anything that happens between the start and the end. And that's not really the technical definition. But as long as you have a set end and beginning, it will work. That's the thing. Like even if it falls apart completely, you'll have a climax. And that was kind of part of this. That's one of the more, not completely unusual. Obviously, there's a lot of games that do it, but like choosing to have an ending, you know, everyone knows is going to happen. It changes the player's choices and gives you enormous freedom. And especially, like, I'm so glad that you see the kind of just by adding questions, you know what the game's going to be like, and it's not. You know what I mean? Like, it just follows very naturally. Oh, these are. I mean, I ran a game where everyone was Buffy characters or Buffy fans on a forum. That's the first time I actually did these questions, actually. And obviously, I quickly Googled a map of Sunnydale. And so I just threw the Sunnydale. Obviously, Buffy was murdered, and they arrived. There was a big crucifixion scene at the start, and I gave them those Sunnydale maps to ask where you're going. And sort of like everyone I was playing with knew much more about Buffy than I did. But I just asked them. So okay, tell me what happens there then. And you know what I mean? Like, and then we're exploring Sunnydale. You know what I mean? Like, and that it's really easy, you know, because the answers are all powerful because they're stuff we know about.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really interesting that you can dive into like these different fandoms. You can dive into something that you're interested in. You could dive into any number of things. You put a little bit of yourself in your characters, and you're in for a really interesting ride. It feels like.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by that. The way too that like every one that I guess every version of the game that I've interacted with so far, and from what I hear from people, is like this emphasis on like how things used to be and how I am now, and like what I wanted for myself and didn't get or did get, and how it like did or didn't make me happy too. Like those playing around with those themes too is like fascinating.
I think
and complicated.
I mean, it's like the question in Die is like, why? Because it's like, why do these players want to play an RPG? That's kind of what the game's about. And do they prefer fantasy to reality, or are they willing to take what they've learned in fantasy and bring it back to reality? That's mostly what we do in games. You know what I mean? And that's true of us, especially because there's quite a bit of bleed in Die. So if you're kind of using bits yourself, you're really, in some degree, talking about why you play games.
Right.
Yeah. But you're doing it with the safe magic circle protecting you a bit. And that's interesting because, like, as you're saying, like, Die isn't totally about what we bring to the table. And that's what RPGs are. You know, like, that's why I say it's my love song to it in this way. Like, I say it's so, meta's awful. I mean, I love to write so much meta stuff, but I write meta out of love. You know, that kind of like, I'm an ex-critic. You know, I'm somebody who really is interested in and fell in love with art in all its forms. And like, Die is my attempt to say, okay, this is why I think one reason why RPGs work. Yeah,
it's just meta all the way down.
Yeah, it's weird because I swear it's accessible, but it's also like, you know, it's obviously completely pretentious nonsense too.
Yes, it's excessively pretentious. No, and I don't think there's anything wrong with, you know, like, I always make a point of saying too, like, I don't think meta is a dirty word. Like, a lot of people have weird feelings around that, and you know, it does add like layers upon layers upon layers in things. But like, I love that. I love getting to like explore, you know, like peeling things apart and being like, where does this really come from? Like, where does it lead?
Yeah, I'll tell you actually. You talk about the games you played in terms of like regrets and that aspect. There's actually, I mean, they're common because they're the big emotions in most people's lives. Like if you've lived any amount of time, you think about your past. However, like there is one of the set groups is the last game before graduation, and that's major theme is fear. It's about fear about leaving school. And it's about, you know, and it's like, well, maybe I can just wimp out and go to another dimension and have that there. I don't, because especially like, imagine 18 now, how petrifying the world would be. Like I think back and I know I couldn't handle it now. And that, you know what I mean? And that's also, like, whilst most of the themes we've done that, I don't think Die has to be about that. It's just one of those, like, if you write the right persona questions, you can get the sort of, like, if this is going to be a game about this kind of stage in life. And that's interesting. Yeah. It's about people. That's the main thing. Like, you know, we play, just like why I play RPGs so much now is like, I want to get together with some people. That's the other thing. My job is so solitary. Me playing a solo RPG doesn't really, or playing a solo game doesn't really tickle the urge. And competitive sort of most online gaming doesn't really tickle that urge either. But sitting around a table or playing on Zoom with somebody, that seems like, you know, it's primal going back to the fire, you know, pit in caveman times. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That collaboration is,
the later we get, the weirder I get. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Absolutely. Anything else that you want to say about Die before we head out, Kieron?
No, I hope, I feel I was rusty, but like I hope people are entertained by what we talked about. It's been lovely to be here. Die, we actually just announced the first expansion for it. In fact, it's like we're doing a set of scenario books basically with 3 scenarios in each. But the first one's called Bizarre Love Triangles. That's the scenario I've written. I basically wanted to write a hex crawl, like for Die, because it's like, obviously it's a big manual. There's a lot in it, but I think that where Die is right now is showing the other stuff, as in the stuff which is we nod towards, but okay, let's explicitly show something. Like we talked, you know, Amelia was saying earlier, we use, you know, that's why I brought up the theme of like fear of leaving school being a theme. So there's a lot of maybe that kind of stuff a bit. But like what I want to do with like this scenario was 2 things: write a hex crawl because I've never done that before. 2, write an actual pre-gem because Die is so, you know, it gives you the stuff to make an adventure from. But I wanted to write something which 100% you can plug stuff in, as in the Persona Jet leaves, you know, the specific encounters written, specific questions Persona Jet, which narrowed the characters a bit, but like still very, very flexible. And then in this encounter, and then that will lead to a very personalized encounter, but still something you can run out the box. And so me writing this adventure, I think it showed, this is a way you can actually write a Die adventure if you wanted to. So it's kind of like, I feel I'm still kind of like, if you've got time, I could actually run through one encounter to give you an example. Have you got time or?
Oh, yeah, we've got time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I decided to spoil one encounter of the 20 because it's just to give examples. It's basically the setup is everyone is basically friends in a social group, probably bars, but it could be like a coffee shop. It could be anything. Everyone is hung up on an X. Hence, it's an X crawl. Yeah, I know, shameless, I know. Everyone's hung up. And they're all archetypally hung up. Like one person is the unrequited person. One person left their lover. One person had their lover leave them. One person is fickle and broke a load of people's hearts. And the GM is the only person who doesn't talk about their exes. And it's like, and they're just effing sick of this. Will you please stop talking about these people? Let's play a game instead. Anyway, so that's the sort of setup. And you might imagine it gets messier than that. The encounter I'm going to use is the Fool's encounter, which is the fickle. And you get to define, so the fickle is like, why don't you, one of their big questions is, why do your relationships not work out? And it's like, and some of them are like, I just kind of meet someone new and there's a spark and, and then there's all stuff like, I need to find the one, so there's different levels of reasons why you're breaking people's heart, but you're still breaking people's heart. So that kind Ryan would have trouble. That character's fundamentally bad. Not bad, but leaves detritus behind anyway.
Yeah.
But their encounter. So the way it works, okay, you found this forest. You go into this forest. There's no food here, but you hear bird song, and you ask the fool, okay, what's the sort of one-liners? What sort of sweet things do you say to your lovers? And they would say, and then the birds are just singing that to each other happily. You go through the woods. You eventually reach this area, and you ask, okay, that place, there's a place in town you tend to go with lovers in the first morning after. What is it? It's obviously there, entirely weird in the wood, except it's covered in blood. You go there. The only place that isn't covered in blood is the seat where you sit.
Oh.
You start exploring it, and then D6 of your exes come out of the woods. They're like Nazgul exes. They're like basically your classic hipster partner, but dead eyes, and they're all holding knives. They don't speak at all.
Oh, boy.
They only go for the fool. Everyone else is, they ignore the fool. If any of them manage to kill the fool, you turn to another player and say, okay, you probably before that ask the actual fool, say, hey, do you recognize this ex? And then you sort of say who they are or whatever. If any of them manage to kill the fool doesn't die. They fall asleep, and they immediately relive. You ask another player to say, okay, tell me about this person's first night, heartbroken over the fool. The other player describes it at length. And you say to the fool that you've just experienced that whole night with the intensity of emotion. Then all the Nazgul X's disappear, and the fool has that. And then the Nazgul X's proceed to pursue the players for the rest of the game until either peace is made or the fool has actually experienced all his exes, or I'm saying their exes torments on that first night. Wow. That's the set encounter. And then each of the 5 characters have their own big one, like big set piece, and then there's all the other smaller encounters which aren't. And of course, there's also the story about the master, because what's really going on with them.
Wow!
You know what I mean? So it's you know what I mean? That plays out the box because it's all about the question. It's a structure, but at the same time, it's also very personalized. So that's what I've written for this adventure. And there's 2 more, which is by 2 amazing designers. One's got a Pokemon theme, like using Pokemon cards as a kind of as a world generator. It's actually any collectible card game actually, because they're and the other one is about kids at as a camp basically. Yeah. So it's much more like so it's small and character based, and it's all about sort of I think it's troubled children. I think maybe they're basically kids with real problems at home, and that's the kind of vibe. Then, so you got that's very persona led and really evocative. I think it's the thing. It's really good character work. It's got a lot of really great stuff with fairies. Anyway, that's the first adventure pack, and we're doing more.
How difficult is it to write kind of a pre-gen scenario for something like this that is so open? I'm really intrigued by that process. That's
the reason why it took me Total Party Kill in the manual is an attempt to do, like, there's several pre-gens in the manual, but a lot of them involve improvisation. So like the one set of the con, you use the con map, but that's still like giving you a prompt and asking you to improvise. Total Party Kill is much tighter, but at the same time it's doesn't really give you a huge amounts of stuff. This was explicitly okay, let's see how hard it is. And it's not that hard. I mean, it's like, it uses all the knowledge I've done of the game,
Yeah.
but it's not that hard. As in that, now I've realised that the art is making the persona question specific enough to get an answer.
Yeah, just like how loaded do I need to make these questions?
Like, and especially like, and also stressing the loaded questions to the GM in terms of like, you really need this question to work, as in like filter and like, and you don't need to narrow usually, but you need to narrow enough.
Yeah.
And that's fine, like, because the second you've got that, you've got information you can plug in. Then you think, okay, how can I play with these characters? Because this scenario obviously isn't the classic die temptation scenario. It's much more of a kind of survival horror sort of vibe.
Yeah.
But that's also fine,
Yeah.
What I'd really like to do is do a full die campaign, like an actual, like something, multiple scenarios linked together or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I kind of hope that more people I think like especially designers, now they've seen me do this, they'll go, oh, that's an option. Because that's kind of, you see what's possible in a game and then you do it. Actually, I ran one at Gen Con, which was a really interesting idea for, like I said, something the comic does is do a history of RPGs. And the one I did at Gen Con was basically using the history of Gen Con as the adventure. So you went through different Gen Con periods and I used different con maps from different periods.
Oh.
I read like Robin Laws's book for it and used all the trivia about it. Like one was at a Playboy Mansion, for example, So if they suddenly find themselves at a Playboy Mansion, it's weird, but it's also educational in a weird way. So that was really interesting for me. I got, but I can't believe there's a designer I've been talking to and they want to do a kind of, history of RPGs in the form of an adventure, like a larger adventure, like a mega dungeon, and it's something like that. And that's really die. And meta, Amelia. But that's the stuff that excites me. Like die is a place to do this. Like why do we play games? Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's find out.
Yeah.
That's so good.
I love it. Like a game about games. It's just so good. It makes me so happy. Kieron, thank you so much for joining us for this die episode. This was fantastic. It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for having me. It's honestly been so lovely. I mean, RPGs are just about talking, so having a chance to just talk about it in that kind of way. I know, yet again, it's meta, but like it's really lovely to be talking about it, and it's really fun to just sort of, play my game again briefly.
Yeah.
Play around with it.
Which is a delight. Yeah.
Can you tell our listeners where they can find you online, what kind of things you're doing, where to find your stuff?
I'm Kieron Gillen, as in my name is difficult to spell. Probably best to look at the podcast description. But I'm Kieron Gillen everywhere. There's KieronGillen.com that links to most of my places. I've got a button-down mailing list that, if you want to basically a semi-weekly dose of me, that's what you should do. I write essays and plug my stuff and just generally ramble. That's probably the best place. And I'm on most social medias as Kieron Gillen. Like I have a Twitter account, but I'm abstractly not using it due to evil.
Yeah, same.
It's like I've got like 75,000 followers, so I don't want to delete it because you can use that for good in some ways. Like if somehow magic, but I'm certainly not posting any content there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm on Blue Sky most at the moment, and I'm on Mastodon a bit, but Blue Sky more. Posting nonsense.
Yeah, about the same, right?
Yep.
Waiting to see where it all falls.
Yeah,
exactly. Again, thank you so much for joining us for this special bonus episode of Character Creation Spotlight. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to check out both Die, the role-playing game, as well as the Die comics, which are both fantastic.
Yes.
Both will have a link in the show notes. Head over there right now, and we'll see you next time, everybody. Call to action.
Yeah, like that. I'm really excited that we got to do this bonus episode. I know we originally were thinking about it as like a spotlight episode, which it kind of was. That's sort of how we structured it. But we've never done a spotlight episode really on a game that we literally just covered.
Yeah.
We've done like Descent into Midnight, I think.
That was the closest one. Yep.
Yeah.
But back then we weren't doing character creation on the spotlight episode. So it was like such an interesting like experience going from the episodes itself, the series itself with one bunch of guests. And now we're just focusing on the designer, and it was a really nice mix, I think.
Yeah. Well, we always like the designer episodes because you get to really pick their brains about why they chose to do the things that they did and get a little more insight on how they think the game should work and that kind of stuff. And it's always fun to talk to people that play and run the game regularly because they see things a little bit differently. So I really like that this series we got to do both.
Yes.
Especially for as cool of a game as Die is.
It's so good.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. We're going to play it soon. So
I know.
it's going to be later this week as of when this comes out, like in a couple days.
Oh my goodness.
So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah. And Kieron was such a fabulous guest. Like from scheduling on, just such a joy to work with, to collaborate with. So thank you, Kieron, for coming on the show. And giving us some really good insight into Die and like giving us more characters that we're going to regret not being able to play. So.
Right. Yeah. Because even Kieron was like, oh, I really want to play this now. It's like, you're welcome. That's what everyone says. Yeah, we've had a lot of really cool people on and people that are really big in the tabletop community. But this one was like, he wrote for Star Wars and Marvel and stuff. Like, this is a big deal. Like, this is a big, and, like, he's just like, hey, I'm on my podcast. Like, okay.
It was a lot of fun.
It was great.
I'm really glad that we reached out to him. I'm really glad that it worked out. And I'm really glad we were able to make the series what it is. I'm really proud of this series. And I think it's going to be, up there for one of my favorites, the way we did it. So. Yeah. Really hope
I hope everybody else feels the same. Yeah. Exactly.
But we could go on and on about this game and the series and Kieron, but we do have to let you go at some point. And before we do have some calls to action.
Just a reminder, if you want to find us on social media, please check out our new social media landing page at contact.charactercreationcast.com. You'll find links to all of our social media and everywhere else that you can find us online as we all try to figure out where to go after the great Twitter exodus.
Exactly. One thing that we would like you to check out, we've got a couple of Kickstarters that we're very excited about right now this month. First, the Skyjack's Courier's Call Kickstarter is happening right now for the 3rd season. We both absolutely love this show, and we're both very thrilled that they met their first goal. They are funded for season 3 as of right now. So season 3 is going to happen, which is super exciting. But if we can get them just about $3,000 more to $15,000 total, they will double the number of episodes they're able to put out this season, which is just...
That would be so great.
It would be so good. Like, there's so many youthful listeners that listen to this show and enjoy it, and this is just a more inspiration for them to get into the hobby, and goodness gracious. Let's see if we can help them out.
Second, the Kickstarter for Acadicon 2023 is going on right now. And as of the time of this recording, they are just a couple hundred away from funding fully. And it'll probably be funded by the time Ryan gets around to editing this. So we both hope to be there this year, and we're looking forward to seeing some of our fans there as well. It's a small convention, and it's always a blast. So check out the Kickstarter if you haven't yet. And we'll have links to both of those Kickstarters in our show notes.
We usually talk about this at the very end, but we are still out of reviews to read. We haven't had any for a while, and we would really love to have some more. I know we've talked a lot about our Patreon over the last few months with our anniversary and Patreon drive, but reviews really help us out too. They help people find the show. They make us feel fantastic. And having some more recent ones would go a long way in helping new people join our growing community. If you do leave one, we will read it here on the episode too. You can also leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, or even Facebook.
We do, of course, have our Patreon too, which helps us cover all of the costs of making this show. We offer a ton of great rewards, from weekly chit-chat episodes where Ryan and I catch up with each other and talk about whatever comes to our minds at the moment at just the $1 level. You can get a set of custom dice and our bonus game design series, Undying Bonds, at the $5 level, or our monthly sticker club at the $10 level, where we send out a brand new sticker each month, sometimes based on a series, sometimes just based on fun jokes from the show. All patrons get access to special patron-only channels in our Discord, too. discord.charactercreationcast.com. And a shout-out on the show every episode.
Mm-hmm. This week, we have a brand new patron that we'd like to welcome to the community and thank them personally for checking out our Patreon. So, Kenning, thank you so much for your support. It means so much to both of us. For everyone else, if you want us to thank you personally every episode, don't forget to join up. Then we can read your name out during our call to action like we're about to do right now for our recurring patrons. And as usual, we like to start things off with Lieutenant and DJG, aka Tigranosaurus. Thank you. So glad to have you backing us.
Eric Bonce and Daryl Holiday II, many thanks to you.
Shadim Cabal and the Shyest Barbarian, we are so grateful to you.
Thanks, Benjamin Sweeney and Lorcan McGinnis. We're glad to have you with us.
Rob Fletcher and Kevin Brown, thanks.
Tentacle Duck and Cole McCallum, we're happy to have you here with us. Thank you so much.
Let's see if I can get through this with the first try. I haven't read it yet. John Adamus and the devilishly diva dinosaurs with their new tour Dirge on the Run hear such classics as Hunger and Thirst, Nightmares of a Horse. Thanks for making this all possible.
Incredible. Carlos Salazar and Eric S., thank you so much.
Ross Kingston and Ian Potmeyer, you shouldn't have, but we're so glad that you did.
Grace Bergeron and Soragoth, thanks for your continued support.
Liam G. and Brian Colm, you rock, thank you.
Garden GM and Dark Mirror, thanks for helping us make this show.
Tom and Blue Kryptonite, thanks for your continued support.
We're glad to have you here. Nicole Trainer and Danny, thank you for supporting us.
And thank you, Liam Murray and Satwant Kangura. Your support brings us so much joy.
And thanks to all of our future supporters. You're helping to pay for everything we put into this show and contributing to a growing and really supportive community. Mm-hmm. If you are one of our $5 plus patrons and you haven't received a set of dice from us yet, but you really want one, please be sure to add your address into Patreon so we can get a set out to you in the mail. Yes, even internationally. Mm-hmm. Just send us a message on social media through Patreon or to our email and let us know you've updated your info, and I will get to the post office as soon as I can.
Mm-hmm. That is all that we have for this episode. Join us on our next episode where, who knows, we'll be covering something. It's a new month. It's a new game. It's a new series.
It's a whole new
for
world.
Me. And I'm feeling fine. Until then, take care, everybody. Stay safe out there. Drink some water. Look out for each other. And keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time. Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at CreationCast, or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, exclusive merch, and much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.